Dead Island 2 takes place in Los Angeles in the midst of a zombie apocalypse. At the beginning of the game, players select from one of 6 playable characters as their player avatar called a Slayer. Each of them has their own unique skills and abilities. They have to choose from one of 2 defensive abilities, either learning to block hostile attacks or dodge them. The game's world is divided into 10 different zones. Players can pick up both ranged and melee weapons. Each weapon can be further customized with mods, which add elemental effects and perks, which can alter the player's stat. Weapons are divided into different rarity, with rare and superior weapons being generally more powerful. In addition, players can use the environment to their advantage. Resident Evil 4 is a survival horror game. Players control the US agent Leon S. Kennedy, who must save Ashley Graham, the daughter of the United States President, from the mysterious Los Illuminados cult who live in European territory. As in the original game, the player organizes their inventory with an attaché case. New to the remake, a crafting system enables the player to create items and ammunition using collected resources. The merchant returns, allowing the player to buy, upgrade, and trade items while providing this side quest that can be completed during the main story. Similarly to the original, the focus of combat is shooting enemies and reloading. However, Leon can now move and use weapons at the same time, allowing him to evade attacks while firing and reload while on the move. Leon can use melee attacks to injure enemies and push them away. A new parrying mechanic allows him to block, counterattack, and kill downed enemies with his knife. Dead Space is a survival horror game. Like the original game, it is set on a mining spaceship overrun by deadly monsters called necromorphs. Following the discovery of an artifact called the Marker, the player controls engineer Isaac Clarke as he navigates the spaceship and fights the necromorphs, while struggling with growing psychosis. While featuring all the same suits and weapons from the original game, weapons can now be acquired by simply progressing through the story, and do not need to be purchased at the suit kiosk using blueprints. While suits and weapons can still be upgraded with power nodes, they can only be fully upgraded by finding different suit blueprints or weapon parts that can be found in different areas of the ship. Weapon parts that on different upgrades, such as increased magazine size or better area of effect. The Last of Us Part 2 is an action-adventure game played from a third-person perspective, featuring elements of the survival horror genre. The player traverses post-apocalyptic environments such as buildings and forests. To advance the story, the player can use firearms, improvised weapons, and stealth to defend against hostile humans and cannibalistic creatures infected by a mutated strain of the cordyceps fungus. Control intermittently switches between Ellie and Abby. The player also briefly controls Joel. In the opening sequence, the nimble nature of the player character introduces platforming elements, allowing the player to jump and climb to traverse environments and gain advantages during combat. The player can break glass objects such as windows to access certain areas or obtain supplies. Some areas are navigated by horse or boat. In combat, the player can use long-range weapons such as rifles and bows, and short-range weapons such as pistols and revolvers. The player is able to scavenge limited-use melee weapons such as machetes and hammers, and throw bricks and bottles to distract or attack enemies. Collected items can be used to upgrade weapons at workbenches or craft equipment such as health kits, Molotov cocktails, and makeshift silencers. The Walking Dead is a point-and-click adventure game. The player, in control of Clementine, can direct the character around the environment, examine and interact with various scenery elements, and collect and use objects to advance the story. The player can also initiate conversations with non-player characters via conversation trees. Certain replies from other characters may offer the player multiple choices to select from, including the option to stay silent, with a limited amount of time to make the selection if the player does not select an option. The conversation will continue as if they had stayed quiet. Such choices can affect how the other characters will later react to Clementine, which can influence later events in the story. Other scenes are more action-oriented, requiring the player to complete quick-time events to prevent Clementine or her allies from getting killed. If the player fails at these events, the game will restart at the start of the scene. Such action scenes may also require the player to make a key decision within a limited time frame, such as which of two characters to save from attacking walkers. In the near future, an experimental attempt to harness the power of the Earth's core ends in a terrifying disaster: the release of the Sludge God. This eldritch abomination begins terraforming the area, turning soil to scum and the living to undead monsters. However, the genius behind the experiment has a plan to make things right. All he needs is a team of competent, highly trained mercenaries to get the job done. Unfortunately, they were all too expensive, which is why he's hired the Toxic Commandos. Take control of one of the commandos, team up with your friends and send the Sludge Guard and its horde of things that should never be back to the underworld. Choose the class that matches your playstyle, pile into your favorite ride, and unload an array of gunfire, grenades, special abilities, and freaking katanas as you save the planet. Then now's your time to go commando. The battle begins with nightfall. It's 2091 and Megacorp Horzine has produced the ultimate army, an obedient horde of bioengineered monstrosities called Zeds. Now, only the rebel group Nightfall stands between these infernal creations and the future of humanity. Killing Floor 3 is the next installment in the legendary action horror series. This intense FPS puts you in the boots of a Nightfall specialist, joining forces with up to 5 teammates to battle waves of Zeds, earn dosh, unlock skills, and build the ultimate arsenal. No More Room in Hell 2 is a sequel to a cult favorite zombie game that's been on PC since 2011. Hiding in the shadow of Left 4 Dead. Like the original game and so many others, this sequel is Left 4 Dead inspired, though it's how it diverges down a path of its own that reveals the game's best qualities. Played on a huge open-world map that blends thick forests, ranger caverns, firewatch towers, and a massive power plant that serves as the level's end goal. Each of the game's 8 players spawns alone with a few supplies nearby, a few points of interest marked on their map, and the full world to explore. But exploration must be done carefully and with great consideration for every action. In my time with the game, stamina was quite limited, especially in combat, where I could only get in about the swings with my metal pipe before I had to retreat, while I caught my breath. Into the Dead, Our Darkest Days is a side-scrolling shelter survival game that tasks you with guiding a desperate group of zombie apocalypse survivors to safety. Craft weapons, scavenge resources, balance your group's needs, and try to get everyone out of danger alive. Texas, 1980. Walton City is a sprawling coastal metropolis in the grip of a scorching heatwave and crippling economic crisis. Everything changes when an unstoppable zombie outbreak reaches our shores. Walton City is soon overrun by hordes of the undead. The few remaining survivors cut off from any chance of outside help. Forced to band together, these everyday people must make their way to a rumored safe zone outside of the city, and their only chance of survival.